The void between stars held secrets that most civilizations would never discover, but humanity had always been different, driven by an insatiable hunger to push beyond every boundary, to challenge every limit. Tonight, that difference would matter more than ever before. Captain Helena Morse stood on the bridge of the UNSC Defiant, her weathered hands gripping the rail as she stared at the tactical display. 20 years of service had taught her to read danger in the patterns of light that danced across her screens. What she saw now made her blood run cold, yet her expression remained steady. Behind her, Lieutenant Devon Park worked furiously at his console, his young face illuminated by cascading data streams. "Captain, the signatures are confirmed," Devon said, his voice tight with tension. 73 vessels, all matching the profile from the outer colony reports. They're holding position at the edge of our sensor range. Helena nodded slowly, her mind already racing through scenarios and countermeasures. The Krell Dominion had arrived, just as the desperate warnings from the Terran frontier had predicted. For 300 years, the Krell had swept across the galaxy, subjugating every species they encountered. Their empire spanned 2,000 star systems, built on the broken backs of countless conquered worlds. Now they had come for Earth. How long until they reach firing range? Helena asked, her voice calm despite the weight of the moment. 18 minutes at current speed, replied Tactical Officer Raina Voss, a sharp-eyed woman with silver streaks in her black hair. They're maintaining a standard intimidation formation. Flagship in the center, heavy cruisers on the wings, destroyers screening the flanks. Helena allowed herself a slight smile. Standard formation. Predictable. The Krell had won so many easy victories that they had grown complacent, expecting every new species to crumble before their superior numbers and firepower. They didn't know that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the first probe returned with evidence of hostile alien empires. "Signal the fleet," Helena commanded. "Execute Protocol Shadowfall. All ships maintain current positions until my mark." Across Earth's orbital space, 42 warships acknowledged the order. To the Krell sensors, they would appear to be holding a desperate defensive line, protecting their homeworld with outdated vessels and primitive weapons. It was exactly what Helena wanted them to think. On board the Krell flagship Eternal Supremacy, War Master Druven studied the human formation. With barely concealed contempt, his chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the command center. Lights as he gestured dismissively at the tactical display. "This is what resisted our scout fleets." He clicked in his native tongue, his mandibles spreading in what passed for a Krell smile. "They cluster around their world like frightened younglings. Sub-Commander Thane, what is the status of their defensive capabilities?" Thane, a younger Krell with darker plates and sharper movements, consulted his instruments. "War Master, their ships appear to use fusion-based propulsion and kinetic weapons. Some energy signatures suggest primitive directed energy systems. Nothing that can penetrate our shields. Their largest vessel is 1/3 the size of our smallest cruiser." Druven's satisfaction deepened. Another easy conquest for his record. Another primitive species to add to the Dominion's labor forces. The Emperor would reward him well for bringing this resource-rich world into the fold without having to destroy its infrastructure. "Open communication with their command vessel," Druven ordered. "Let us offer them the mercy of surrender before we demonstrate the futility of resistance." The view screen shimmered, and a human face appeared. Captain Helena Morse looked directly at him, her strange bilateral eyes showing neither fear nor submission. This momentarily puzzled Druven. Most species showed appropriate terror when first witnessing Krell superiority. "I am War Master Druven of the Krell Dominion," he announced, his translator rendering his words into what his linguists assured him was the dominant human language. "Your species has attracted the attention of the Emperor. You will submit to Dominion authority, provide tribute, and accept our governance. In return, you will receive protection and a place in the greatest empire this galaxy has ever known." Helena tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. "That's a generous offer, War Master, but I'm afraid Earth's answer is no." The simplicity of her refusal stunned Druven into momentary silence. No negotiations, no desperate pleas for better terms, no threats or bluster, just a calm, flat rejection. "You do not understand your position," Druven said, his tone hardening. "We have conquered worlds far more advanced than yours. Your primitive fleet cannot stand against Dominion power. I offer you this one chance to surrender with honor." "We understand perfectly," Helena replied, And for the first time, Druven detected something in her expression. Not fear, not anger. Something that looked almost like pity. You've conquered worlds more advanced than what you see here. That's true. But you're making a critical assumption, War Master. You assume what you see is all we have. Devon looked up from his console, his fingers hovering over the activation sequence. Captain, they're charging weapons. All 73 ships. Energy signatures are spiking. Helena never took her eyes off Druven's face on the screen. War Master, I want you to understand something. Humanity didn't reach the stars yesterday. We've been preparing for this meeting for a very long time. We've studied your tactics, your technology, your history. We know how you fight. We know why you win. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. And we've built accordingly. Druven felt the first flutter of uncertainty in his thorax. There was something in the human's tone, a confidence that didn't match the tactical situation. You bluff, he said. We have scanned your planet. We know your capabilities. You know what we wanted you to know, Helena corrected. Lieutenant Park, show them what humanity has really built. Devon's fingers danced across his console, sending the activation signal that would change everything. Across Earth's orbital space, the 42 visible warships began to change. Their hulls shimmered and split, revealing that each one was actually a carrier. From their interiors, thousands of smaller craft began to emerge, spreading out in a geometric pattern that suddenly didn't look primitive at all. But that wasn't what made Druven's blood chill in his veins. Behind Earth's moon, power signatures were lighting up. Massive signatures, each one dwarfing his flagship. Structures that had been hidden, camouflaged, silent, suddenly roared to life. Thane's voice cracked with shock. War Master, new contacts! Multiple massive signatures emerging from the lunar far side. Energy readings are off the scale. I'm counting 15 contacts, each one 5 times the mass of our flagship. On the view screen, Helena's expression finally changed. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Welcome to Earth, War Master Druven. Let me introduce you to what humanity builds when we know someone is coming to take our freedom away. The silence that followed was absolute. Druven stared at the tactical display as his certainty crumbled like dust in his claws. The massive signatures emerging from behind Earth's moon were unlike anything in the Krell database. 15 colossal vessels, each one radiating enough power to light up an entire star system. Their hulls were dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, making them appear as tears in the fabric of space itself. War Master, those ships, they're moving into formation, Thane reported, his voice stripped of its earlier confidence. Their acceleration curves are impossible. Nothing that size should be able to move that fast. Druven forced himself to think clearly despite the shock. He had not survived 200 battles by panicking when the enemy revealed unexpected strength. Analysis. What are their weapons capabilities? Thane worked frantically at his console, but the readings made no sense. Sir, I cannot get clear scans. Their hulls are reflecting our sensors somehow, but the energy signatures suggest weapon systems that are at least 3 generations beyond our current technology. I'm detecting gravitational distortions around their primary arrays. On the view screen, Captain Morse watched them with that same unsettling calm. I can see your analysts are having trouble making sense of what they're seeing. Let me help. Those are Titan-class dreadnoughts. We started building them 60 years ago, when our first deep space probes detected the Krell expansion pattern. Each one took a decade to complete. Each one cost more than our entire planetary economy produced in a year. She gestured, and data began streaming to the Krell flagship. Technical specifications, power outputs, weapon configurations. Druven read them with growing horror. The humans were giving away their tactical information freely, which could only mean one thing. They believed they didn't need secrecy to win. You see, War Master, humanity has a particular talent, Helena continued, her voice taking on an almost conversational tone. We're exceptionally good at learning from our mistakes, and we're even better at learning from the mistakes of others. We studied every species you conquered. We analyzed why they lost. Most of them were peaceful civilizations who had never fought a major war. They had no concept of strategic deception, of building weapons in secret, of preparing for an enemy they hoped would never come. Devon spoke up from his station. Captain, the Krell fleet is spreading out. They're trying to flank us. Let them, Helena replied without concern. Continue. Druven watched his fleet maneuver into attack positions, but the movement felt hollow now. His ships were surrounded by thousands of those smaller human craft. each one matching his destroyers move for move. And behind them, those massive Titan dreadnoughts waited like sleeping giants, their weapon systems humming with barely contained power. But humanity is different, Helena continued. We've been fighting each other for our entire history. We understand war in ways peaceful species never could. We know about bluffing and misdirection. We know how to hide our true strength until the perfect moment. So when we saw you coming, we didn't just build weapons. We built a strategy. Raina Voss reported calmly from Tactical. War Master Druven is hailing us again, Captain. Put him through. Druven's image reappeared, but the contempt was gone from his expression. Now there was calculation, respect, and perhaps the first hint of fear. Captain Morse, it appears we have underestimated your species. This changes the tactical situation considerably. Perhaps we should discuss terms. Terms? Helena raised an eyebrow. What kind of terms did you offer the Vakari people before you enslaved their population? What terms did the Silenth receive before you stripped their world bare? You came here to conquer us, War Master. You came expecting us to bow or die. Now you want to negotiate because you realize we might actually hurt you. The accusation hit home. Druven's mandibles clicked in agitation. You speak of past conquests as if they were crimes. The Dominion brought order to chaos. We united fractured civilizations under a single banner. You destroyed cultures, Helena countered, her voice hardening. You stole freedom. You turned living beings into resources, and you did it because you could, because no one was strong enough to stop you, until now. Across the bridge of the Defiant, the crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment, run simulations thousands of times. Every officer knew their role in the dance that was about to unfold. Devon monitored the positioning of the Krell fleet, feeding real-time data to the tactical computer. Raina kept weapons locked on the primary targets, waiting for the order that might or might not come. We need not be enemies, Druven said, and Helena could hear the strain in his translator's rendering of his voice. The Emperor might be persuaded to offer Earth a partnership rather than subjugation. An alliance between our peoples could be beneficial. Helena leaned forward in her chair. Here's what's going to happen, War Master. You're going to take your fleet and leave our solar system. You're going to return to your Emperor and tell him that Earth is not available for conquest. You're going to recommend that the Krell Dominion establish diplomatic relations with humanity, based on mutual respect and equality. And if I refuse, Druven asked, though they both knew the answer, then we'll show you exactly what these Titan dreadnoughts were designed to do, Helena said quietly. And, War Master, I want to be very clear about something. We didn't build 15 of them because that's all we could afford. We built 15 because our analysts calculated that was the minimum number needed to defend against a Krell expeditionary force of your size. We have more, many more, hidden throughout our system waiting for the signal to activate. It was a bluff, but delivered with such confidence that Druven couldn't be certain, and that uncertainty was a weapon in itself. Thane interrupted urgently. War Master, I'm detecting new energy signatures. The human homeworld itself is powering up massive installations. Planetary defense grids are coming online. I'm counting hundreds of orbital platforms, each one armed with weapons comparable to our cruiser main batteries. Helena smiled. We told you, War Master. We've been preparing. Every resource, every innovation, every ounce of human ingenuity has been focused on this moment for 6 decades. We knew someone like you would come eventually. We just didn't know when. Druven looked at the tactical display, at the web of firepower that now surrounded his fleet. His ships were powerful. His crews were experienced. But the humans had built a trap that had already closed around him. If he attacked, many humans would die. But his entire fleet would be destroyed, and the Dominion would lose not just ships, but the psychological advantage they had maintained for centuries. You would risk war with the entire Dominion over your independence? Druven asked. We would risk extinction, Helena replied simply. That's what you don't understand about humanity, War Master. We would rather die free than live as slaves. Every single person on that planet below us made that choice decades ago when we began this preparation. We knew it might not be enough. We knew we might lose. But we decided that if we were going to face an empire of conquerors, we would face them on our feet, with weapons in our hands, ready to fight to the very last breath. The bridge of the Defiant was silent except for the soft hum of instruments. Helena could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. Everything humanity had worked for hung in the balance. Either Druven would recognize the truth of her words and retreat, or he would let pride push him into a battle that would devastate both sides. Druven's claws tightened on the edge of his command console as he processed what he was facing. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered a species like this. The humans had done something remarkable, something that defied the usual pattern of first contact. They had looked into the darkness between stars and, instead of hoping for peace, had prepared for war, while still keeping their capacity for mercy. "War Master," Thane said softly, "what are your orders?" It was the question that defined leadership, the moment when theory became reality. Druven had sent thousands to their deaths in service of the Dominion, but those had been battles he knew he could win. This was different. He looked at the tactical display again, seeing not just the ships and weapons, but the will behind them. The humans had built all of this not out of aggression, but out of love for something he had almost forgotten existed in the galaxy. Freedom. True, unbending, uncompromising freedom. Helena watched the Krell War Master struggle with his decision. She understood what he was feeling because she had felt it herself during the dark years of preparation. There had been moments when building the Titan seemed impossible, when the cost felt too high, when people questioned whether they should spend so much on weapons that might never be used. But every time doubt crept in, someone would remind them why they were doing this. Not for conquest, not for glory, but for the simple right to choose their own path among the stars. "Captain Morse," Druven said finally, his voice carrying a weight. It hadn't held before. "May I speak plainly off the record?" Helena considered for a moment, then nodded. "Lieutenant Park, suspend transmission recording." Devon's fingers moved across his console. "Recording paused, Captain." Druven's posture changed slightly, becoming less formal. "I have served the Dominion for most of my life. I have brought 47 worlds under Imperial control. I have been decorated, promoted, celebrated as a hero of the conquest. But I have never asked myself the question your species clearly asked. What gives us the right?" The admission surprised Helena, but she kept her expression neutral. "And what answer have you found?" "That is the problem," Druven said, something like exhaustion in his translated voice. "I have no answer. We conquer because we can. We take because we are strong. We rule because no one has been able to stop us. Until today, that seemed like reason enough." Reyna glanced at Helena, uncertainty in her eyes. This wasn't the response anyone had expected. Devon remained focused on his instruments, monitoring the Krell fleet for any signs of deception, but even he could feel the shift in the conversation's tone. "My people have a saying," Helena said carefully. "Power without wisdom is tyranny. Strength without compassion is cruelty. You have power, War Master, you have strength. But you came here thinking those were the only things that mattered. You forgot that the greatest force in the universe isn't found in weapons or ships. It's found in the spirit of beings who refuse to surrender their dignity, no matter the cost." Druven was silent for a long moment. On his bridge, his crew watched him, waiting for orders that would either start or prevent a war. He thought of his homeworld, of the Krell hatchlings who would grow up in a universe shaped by the decisions made today. He thought of the 47 worlds he had conquered, of the faces of those who had surrendered, of the hollow victory celebrations that had followed. "What would you have me do?" he asked, and there was something almost vulnerable in the question. Helena took a breath, knowing that what she said next would echo across the galaxy. "Go home, War Master. Tell your Emperor that you encountered a species that was willing to fight for their freedom with everything they had. Tell him that humanity offers friendship to those who come in peace but will show no mercy to those who come with chains. Tell him that the age of easy conquest is over, because we're not the only ones watching. Every species you've subjugated, every world you've conquered, they're all going to hear about what happened here today." She stood up from her chair, her full attention on Druven. "Tell him that if the Krell Dominion wants to survive the next century, it needs to transform from an empire built on fear into a civilization built on cooperation. Because, War Master, we humans are going to the stars now. We're going to find those species you've conquered. We're going to offer them hope, technology, and if necessary, protection. The galaxy is about to change, and the Dominion can either change with it or be left behind. The words hung in the space between ships, between civilizations, between the past and whatever future would unfold from this moment. Devon felt his heart racing, knowing he was witnessing something extraordinary. Reyna found herself holding her breath, hoping against hope that humanity's gamble would pay off. "You would help our victims?" Druven asked, and Helena couldn't tell if he was offended or impressed. "We would help anyone seeking freedom," Helena replied, "including Krell, who might grow tired of serving an empire built on conquest. War Master, imagine what your people could accomplish if all that military genius was turned toward exploration and discovery instead of subjugation. Imagine the innovations, the art, the culture that could flourish if you weren't spending every resource on maintaining control over unwilling subjects." Druven looked down at his console, at the reports still streaming in about human capabilities. Then he looked at his crew, at Thane and the others who had served with him through countless battles. He saw something in their eyes he hadn't noticed before. Weariness. These were soldiers who had won every battle, but somehow felt like they were losing something important with each victory. "If I return and recommend what you suggest, I will likely be executed for cowardice," Druven said plainly. "Or you'll be remembered as the War Master, who was wise enough to recognize when strength should yield to wisdom," Helena countered. "Someone has to be the first to choose a different path. Someone has to be brave enough to say that just because we can take something doesn't mean we should. Why not you?" The question resonated through the bridge of the eternal supremacy. Why not him? Why not now? Why not choose to be remembered as the one who turned the Dominion toward a better future instead of the one who led it into a war it couldn't win? "Captain Morse," Druven said slowly, "you have given me much to consider. I will withdraw my fleet from your system, but I cannot promise what the Emperor will decide when he learns of this." "I'm not asking for promises," Helena said. "I'm asking for a chance for both our species to find a better way forward. That's all anyone can ask for." Druven straightened, coming to a decision. "Then you shall have that chance, but know this. If we meet again, circumstances may be very different." "If we meet again," Helena replied, "I hope it will be as friends rather than enemies. But if it must be as enemies, we'll be ready." The transmission ended. On the Defiance bridge, no one spoke for several seconds. Then Devon let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Captain, the Krell fleet is powering down weapons. They're beginning to withdraw." Helena watched the tactical display as 73 hostile ships turned away from Earth, heading back toward the edge of the system. Behind them, the Titan dreadnoughts maintained their positions. Silent guardians, ready to spring into action if the withdrawal proved to be a deception. The Krell fleet moved through Earth's solar system with a measured grace that spoke of discipline rather than retreat. Helena watched every movement on the tactical display, knowing that her vigilance could not waver until the last hostile ship crossed beyond weapons range. Around her, the bridge crew maintained their stations with professional calm, but she could feel the tension slowly dissolving like morning frost under a rising sun. "Captain, the flagship is transmitting a final message," Devon reported, his voice carrying a note of curiosity. Helena nodded. "Put it through, audio only." Druven's voice filled the bridge, translated but somehow more genuine than before. "Captain Morse, before we depart, I wish to say something that is not in any official report. What you have built here is impressive, but what truly gave me pause was not your weapons. It was your certainty. You knew exactly what you were willing to sacrifice, and you made peace with that cost long before I arrived. That kind of clarity is rarer than any technology. I will carry that lesson with me." "Travel safely, War Master," Helena replied. "And remember, the door to friendship remains open. We would rather have the Krell as partners in exploring this galaxy than as enemies fighting over it." The communication ended. Helena watched as the last Krell vessel engaged its faster-than-light drives, the ships vanishing one by one into the cosmic distance. When the final signature disappeared from her screens, she allowed herself to sink back into her command chair, suddenly feeling every hour of the sleepless nights that had led to this moment. Reyna turned from her station, a smile breaking across her normally stern features. "Captain, we did it. We actually did it." "We did," Helena agreed, though her tone remained measured. But this was just the first test. The real work begins now. She was right, and everyone on the bridge knew it. Across Earth, celebration would soon erupt as news of the Krell withdrawal spread. People would dance in the streets, relieved that the war they had prepared for had been averted. But Helena understood that what they had started today would reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. They had announced themselves not as victims or conquerors, but as a civilization that understood both strength and mercy, that could build terrible weapons but chose diplomacy first. Devon pulled up long-range sensor data, his expression thoughtful. "Captain, look at this." The Krell fleet stopped at the edge of the system. "They're holding position there." Helena leaned forward, studying the readings. "Tactical assessment, Lieutenant Voss?" Reyna worked her console, analyzing the formation. "They're not in an attack pattern. It looks like they're waiting for something. Communications traffic is heavy between the ships." "They're debating," Helena realized. "Druven is trying to convince his subordinates to support his report to the Emperor. Some of them probably want to recommend a full invasion fleet." The bridge fell quiet as they considered the implications. The battle might be over, but the war for hearts and minds was still being fought out there in the dark. Aboard ships filled with warriors who had never experienced anything but victory through force. "Should we do something?" Devon asked. "Send another message?" Helena shook her head slowly. "No. This is something they need to resolve themselves. We've said everything we can say. Now Druven has to find his own courage to walk a different path." Hours passed. The crew rotated through shifts, but Helena remained on the bridge, unable to leave until she knew the outcome. She thought about all the years of preparation, the sacrifices made, the resources poured into the Titan program. They had built those massive ships hoping they would never need to fire a shot in anger. Today, that hope had been realized, but the cost of readiness had been staggering. She remembered the debates in the United Nations, the arguments about whether building such weapons made humanity no better than the empires they feared. She remembered the philosophers and peace activists who had argued that preparing for war would inevitably bring war. But she also remembered the historians who had pointed out that every peaceful civilization in recorded galactic history had been conquered by the first aggressive empire they encountered. Humanity had chosen to be ready, to be strong, but also to be wise enough to offer alternatives to violence. "Captain, the Krell fleet is moving again," Reyna announced, snapping Helena from her thoughts. Every eye on the bridge fixed on the tactical display. The Krell ships were accelerating, but not toward Earth. They were heading away out of the solar system entirely, their formation tight and purposeful. "They're leaving," Devon said, wonder in his voice. "They're actually leaving for good." A message beacon activated, left behind by the departing fleet. Helena ordered it retrieved and decoded. When the translation appeared on her screen, she felt something tight in her chest finally release. The message was simple, marked with Druven's personal seal. "Captain Morse, you asked why not me, why not now? I have decided you are right. I cannot promise the Emperor will listen, but I will speak truth regardless of the consequences. Perhaps that is what courage truly means. You have taught this old warrior something valuable today. May our next meeting be under better circumstances. Until then, know that at least one Krell will remember that strength is not the same as wisdom." Helena read the message aloud to her crew, and when she finished she saw tears in Devon's eyes, pride in Reyna's expression, and relief on every face around her. "Lieutenant Park, transmit a message to Earth Defense Command and all Titan vessels," Helena ordered, her voice steady but warm. "The Krell have withdrawn. Stand down from battle stations but maintain defensive readiness. As of now, humanity has successfully defended its independence and opened the possibility of peaceful coexistence with a major galactic power. Mission accomplished." The bridge erupted in restrained celebration. Officers shook hands, embraced, allowed themselves to feel the weight of what they had achieved. They had faced down an empire and won not through superior firepower, but through superior resolve and the willingness to offer dignity even to those who came to take theirs away. Later, as Helena stood alone in her ready room, looking out at Earth through the viewport, she thought about the future. The Krell might return with greater numbers, or the Emperor might choose diplomacy. Other empires would hear about what happened here and make their own decisions about how to approach humanity. But regardless of what came next, something fundamental had changed in the galaxy today. Humanity had proven that new civilizations didn't have to choose between submission and extinction. They could choose strength tempered with wisdom, power balanced by restraint, readiness for war coupled with a genuine desire for peace. It wasn't a perfect solution, and the challenges ahead would be immense, but it was a beginning. She touched the window, feeling the slight vibration of the ship's systems through the hull. Out there, among the stars, countless species lived under the domination of empires built on conquest. But now they would hear a different story. They would hear about the day Earth stood firm, offered friendship to its would-be conquerors, and changed the course of galactic history not with violence, but with the unshakable conviction that freedom was worth any price. The stars twinkled with the same distant light they always had, but to Helena they looked different now. They looked like possibilities, like doorways to futures yet unwritten, like challenges that humanity would face not with fear, but with the same determined hope that had built the Titans and trained their crews. The galaxy would never again underestimate the small blue world that had dared to dream of standing equal among the stars. And in that moment, Captain Helena Morse allowed herself to smile, knowing that humanity's greatest journey was only just beginning. The weapons they had built would rust in peace or serve in war if necessary, but the spirit that had forged them would endure forever. It was the spirit that said, "We are free, we will remain free, and we will help others find their freedom too." That was humanity's true strength. Not the Titans, not the weapons or the tactics or the preparations. It was the unwavering belief that every being deserved to choose their own destiny, and the courage to defend that belief against any threat, no matter how powerful. The universe had been warned. Earth was awake and it would not bow.